Hello, and welcome to Misery by Simon Moore, adapted from the novel by Stephen King. My name is Omar Osoria, and I will be reading stage directions.
Hello, my name is James Paul Gregory, and I will be playing Paul Sheldon.
Hi, my name is Kit Lanthier, and I'm playing Annie Wilkes.
Act 1. Winter. Scene 1. 26th Annual Romantic Fiction Awards. A microphone stands downstage. A giant cutout of a romantic novel, Misery's Child by Paul Sheldon, behind it. The cover shows a 19th century heroine with windswept hair, voluptuous but vulnerable, in the arms of a dashing young hero. Behind them is another, older man, gray-haired but vigorous and attractive. There is huge applause as Paul, an attractive middle-aged man, stands in front of the microphone, hugging a large bronze award in the shape of a rose. He is wearing an expensive suit and has a relaxed, confident manner. This is not the first time he's won an award. He has a little index card with notes on it, which he sneaks a look at from time to time. Flashbulbs are going off all the time.
Thank you for this. Thank you. I want to dedicate this wonderful award to you ladies, and maybe a few of your husbands if they're honest enough to admit they read me too. When I sit down to write a book, you're the people I do it for. It's as simple as that. It's become very fashionable to ridicule romantic fiction, but in this world of chaos and violence, I don't think we could have too much romance, do you? The question that everyone always asks writers is, where do you get all your ideas from? Everywhere I go, I get the same question. If I ever get to heaven, St. Peter's going to stop me at the gates and say, hey, Paul, where do you get all your ideas from? Well, 10 years ago, when I got the biggest idea of my life, I ran away to a little hotel in Colorado and I wrote all winter. And the result was the first of the Misery novels. When I leave here today, I'm going to go to that same hotel, and no, ladies, I'm not telling you where it is, and I'm going to sit in that same room and write on that same hotel typewriter. And the day I finish, I'll smoke a single cigarette and drink a bottle of Dom Perignon, just as I've done every year. And you'll have the new Paul Sheldon. I just hope you like it as much as the others. Thank you truly, and I'll see you when the snow melts. Mwah! Oh! I forgot the whole point of what I was going to say. Ideas. I was going to tell you where ideas come from. 10 years ago, halfway between my first divorce and my second divorce, I was on a plane from Munich to Denver for a sales conference, and I was very depressed. There was a woman next to me reading a newspaper, and I was reading over her shoulder, like you do. And there was a small piece about tourists stranded in the Bahamas because of some airport strike. And the headline was Misery in Paradise. And I became fixated by that headline. I was not a writer until that exact moment. I never went to that sales conference. I resigned from my job because I'd had an idea that wouldn't go away. And the idea was, what if misery was a person?
The audience applauds wildly. Paul soaks it up. In the background, we can hear a low, ugly noise, a whine. It starts to get louder and louder until it drowns the applause. Scene 2. A Colorado farmhouse. Morning. Lights like car headlamps blind us as the almost deafening noise continues. It sounds like a car horn being pressed continuously. As the sound and light slowly die away, they are replaced by gentle birdsong and soft dawn light beginning to illuminate a small bedroom in a wooden farmhouse. We see the cutaway front of the house showing a hall, downstairs bedroom, bathroom, front door with several large locks, kitchen, and front garden. All of them share a claustrophobic, neglected feel. Rickety stairs in the hallway lead up to an attic bedroom, the interior of which is not seen, and down to a cellar, again unseen. There is an ugly tree outside, which has grown much too near the house and now seems to be part of it, winding itself round the side of the building, spreading and growing into the roof itself like some alien parasite. Thick snow has covered the farmhouse. A path has been cut away to allow access to the front door. It's still snowing heavily. The overall effect is like a gingerbread cottage in a fairy story. The furnishings are contradictory. Flowered covers and lampshades compete with bare, rusting pipes and naked light bulbs. It's like the home of someone who can be very neat one moment and a shameless slob the next. Part of the bedroom has been turned over to a working area with a small wooden bench. There are glass jars with combs of honey stacked against the wall. As the morning light slowly fills the room, we become aware that there is a man, Paul, asleep in the bed. To the side of the bed is an intravenous drip, not connected up. Sitting absolutely still on the other side of the room is a middle-aged woman, Annie, stockily built. She is expressionless, watching him. Somewhere out of sight, a TV is on, tuned to a home shopping channel, too low to really hear properly. Paul starts to stir in the bed. He is mumbling. He wakes up and tries unsuccessfully to sit up.
Don't do that, Paul. If you get those legs of yours talking again, they won't shut up. And I can't give you any more pills yet. I'm giving you too much as it is.
I can't do anything.
You remember who I am? Yes, you do. I'm Annie Wilkes. I've told you enough times.
How did I get here?
By a miracle. There's no other word to describe it.
I can't remember.
There was a storm, but all the weathermen said it was going to go south toward New Mexico. I was in Sidewinder getting feed for the livestock. Andy Roberts said I'd better stop on in if I was going to get back here before the storm hit. And I said to Andy, that storm is going south. But he said, no, it's changed its mind. I had to get back. There's no one to feed the animals but me. The nearest people are the Roydmans, and they're miles away. And boy, they don't like me.
She suddenly switches off for a second, like a robot that suffered a total power cut. She just stares vacantly into space. Paul looks at her. What should he do?
I got about 5 miles out and the snow started. It came fast, up here it always does. I was just creeping along with my lights on, and then I saw skid marks. An hour later, and the snow would have covered them up completely. If I'd been on an upgrade, I might not have stopped. Not very Christian, I know, but there were 3 inches on the road already, and even with a 4-wheel drive, you can't be sure of getting going again. I stopped and looked over the edge, and then I saw your car all topsy-turvy, half buried in the snow down by the river. I hoofed it down through the trees, and then I heard groaning. That was you, Paul.
I don't remember any of this.
When I pulled you out, you had that little bruise on your head, but that didn't look like anything. It was your legs. I could see straight away that your legs just weren't right.
Paul looks down nervously to where his legs are covered by the blankets, but doesn't dare move the sheets to look yet.
I knew I had to get you into the warm or you'd die. So I dragged you up into the truck. You weighed a ton. You're lucky I don't give up easy. And I drove home as fast as I dared. I could smell the booze on your breath, Paul.
I've been drinking champagne because I finished the book. I was so stupid.
Stupid is the word, Paul. I was sure you were going to die. I mean, I was so sure. And then you screamed, and I felt better because I knew you'd live. So I gave you some strong pain medication, and then you went to sleep. Then you woke up and started to scream again, and I gave you some more. While you were out, I got out your driver's license, and I saw the name Paul Sheldon. And I thought, oh, that must be a coincidence. But then I went into the hall, and I checked the picture on the back of Misery in France. And then I got scared. I got real scared and I had to sit down. I thought I was going to faint. Then I found your Writers Guild card and I knew you were Paul Sheldon. Oh boy, the Paul Sheldon.
I'm amazed you know who I am.
That's a laugh. I'm your #1 fan. Your #1 fan. That's what's so miraculous. Before I got the feed, I went to check out the paperbacks at Wilson's. I was hoping Misery's Child would be out finally, but no such luck. Paul, I was actually thinking about you. You ran a fever for a while, but I knocked that out with some Keyflex. You had 1 or 2 close calls. You've been unconscious most of the last 2 weeks. You owe me your life.
2 weeks? I've been out for 2 weeks?
I fed you intravenously to start with. That's where the marks on your arms are.
Shouldn't I be in a hospital?
Well, you're better than in a hospital because I'm a trained nurse. You won't get finer care anywhere. Now it's time you rested.
My legs really hurt.
Well, of course they do. In a minute, you can have some more medication.
Yes, I think I need some now.
Any minute. Don't tire yourself by talking too much.
Oh, did you find a bag? In the car, I had a bag. It was...
Kind of bag. You mean this? I was just fooling with you, you old silly. I took the liberty of looking inside it. You don't mind, do you?
No, of course not. I'm just relieved you've got it.
She pulls out a typed manuscript and holds it to her breast like a lover. Then she looks at him slyly like a coy child trying to guess her birthday present before she opens it.
It's called Fast Cars, so it can't be a Misery novel. No cars in the 19th century, fast or otherwise. I took the liberty of glancing through it. You don't mind, do you?
Of course not.
And if I read it, you wouldn't mind?
You're privileged. You'll be the first person in the world to read it apart from me.
Because I would never presume to do such a thing without your permission. I respect you too much. In fact, Paul, I love you. Your creativity, that's all I meant.
I know. You're my #1 fan.
That's it! That's it exactly! You wouldn't mind if I read it in the spirit of fan love?
No.
I'm sorry, it's not a Misery book. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
It's better than the Misery books. Much better, actually. I've been planning this for the last 5 years. I happen to think it's the best work I've ever done.
Then it must be truly great, Paul.
Well, I don't know about that, but let's just say you may be looking at the winner of next year's American Book Award.
You're good. I knew you would be. Just reading your books, I knew you would be. A man who could think of Misery Chastain, who could breathe life into someone like her. It just had to be good.
I wonder if you could make a telephone call for me? My agent is going to be very worried about me.
Of course, but the phone lines are down at the moment because of the snow. Time for your pills. 2 every 6 hours, on the hour. On the hour, not before, not 5 minutes to the hour, but on the hour.
She puts the capsules in his mouth and makes him suck them off her fingers. She holds the glass of water to his lips.
Is this a farm? I heard animals.
Not really. 6 laying hens, 2 cows. Oh, and Misery. You won't think I'm very nice calling a sow after the brave, beautiful woman you've created, but I meant no disrespect. She's very friendly.
Fade to darkness. Scene 3. The same night. The house is dark apart from a few small shaded lights. Annie is sitting on the edge of the bed feeding Paul soup. Nothing but the sound of him slurping. She gives him a spoonful. Then, waits a few moments, just like a nurse. The silence becomes oppressive, and he tries to make conversation.
You haven't mentioned the book. Have you read any of it?
About 40 pages. I don't think it's as good as the others. It's hard to follow. It keeps jumping about in time.
It's just a technique. It shows Tony's confused state of mind.
Yes, he's very confused, and that makes it less interesting. Not boring. I'm sure you couldn't create a boring character, but less interesting.
Well, it's a style a lot of contemporary novels use. It's called a stream of consciousness.
Is it?
He swallows another mouthful. She's still holding back.
What else?
Well, Paul, it's the profanity. Every other word is that F word. It has no nobility.
Tony's a ghetto kid from Spanish Harlem, and everyone uses those words.
They do not. What do you think I say when I go to the feed store in town? What do you think I say? Now, Andy, give me a big bag of that effing pig feed and a bag of that bitchy cow corn and some of that Christ-in-ear-mite medicine. And what do you think he says to me? You're effing right, Annie, coming right the F up. And I suppose I go down the street to the bank and say to Mrs. Bollinger, here's one big bastard of a check, and you better give me that $50 effing dollars just as effing quick as you can. Do you think that when they put me up on the stand in Denver and accused... There. Look at what you made me do.
Look, Annie, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you don't like the book.
It wasn't what I wanted.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Misery is what I like. Misery. Not some foul little spick car thief. Ugh!
She suddenly throws the bowl on the floor and turns off completely. Just sits there, completely unaware of the outside world. Paul watches her, terrified of moving.
I have such a temper.
I'm sorry.
Well, you should be. You don't use those words in the misery books because they weren't even invented then. Animal times breed animal words, I suppose. But you ought to stick to your misery stories, Paul. I say that sincerely, as your #1 fan. I blacked out all the swear words with a pen for you.
Thanks.
I may go back to it later.
Don't do that if it makes you angry. I sort of depend on you,
I sure do.
Is the telephone working yet?
It's not, Paul, no.
Only it's been quite a long time.
I'm aware of how long the telephone has been out, and I'd rather you didn't keep quizzing me about it. I'm not the phone company, Paul.
Annie? Annie?
What?
Could I have a pack of cigarettes in my bag. Could you?
I know you do, Paul. They're cancer sticks.
So they say. I wonder if I could have them?
No. I don't want your death on my conscience. And you, still so ill. Smokers.
Annie leaves the room, leaving soup all over the floor.
You're not mad at me, are you, Annie?
He waits, wondering what to do, getting more and more anxious. The lights slowly fade to darkness. Scene 4. The same. Night. A naked light bulb in the hall comes on. Annie is standing in the hallway, turning the light on and off 5 times every 5 seconds. She has a bucket and a soapy rag. When it comes on, the light half illuminates Paul, wide awake in bed in his room. He's beginning to wonder what kind of place he's staying in. Annie is lit from above only, and she looks very, very weird. She's staring into space, unaware of what she's doing. Suddenly, she turns the hall light off, and the main light comes on in Paul's room. momentarily blinding him.
God.
She's back.
I suppose you want your cockadoodie medication now.
Oh, yes, please. I feel awful. I haven't slept at all. I never realized how much they were dulling the pain.
I have them, but first I have to clean up the mess on the floor. The mess you made.
She kneels on the floor and mops up the soup. For a while, she cleans without talking to him or looking at him. He gets a bit angry with this game.
I wonder if I could have my tablets now?
I must rinse, or else the soap will leave a dull spot.
Please, Annie. The pain. I'm dying.
You're not dying.
You've made me wait nearly 8 hours. I'm going to scream in a minute.
Then scream, but remember, it's nobody's fault but your own. 3, Novril. Here. 3 instead of your usual 2. Wait.
She reaches down and fills his glass half full with the soupy, soapy, dirty water from the bucket.
Wash them down with this. I know you can dry swallow them, but please believe me when I say I can make them come right back up again. Come on. It's only rinse water. It won't hurt you.
There's no way I'm going to drink that. I mean, what do you think I am? Some kind of naughty child? You must be joking.
I assure you I am not joking, Paul. I will bring them back up again just as soon as... Paul?
Her voice stops him. His hand hovers and then moves away from his mouth. He looks at the glass. There are bits of sediment floating in it. He really wants the pills. And he's frightened of her. She's serious. He takes the glass from her. He swallows the pills and takes a nominal sip.
All of it.
He stares at her. She's tensing up. If he doesn't do what she says, then something much worse will happen. Paul drinks from the glass and starts to gag.
I wouldn't throw them up, Paul. No more until tomorrow.
She waits until he finishes the whole glass. Then she slams it on the dresser beside the bed.
You won't make me mad again, will you?
No.
I love you.
Annie leaves the room with the bucket and turns out the light. She puts the bucket in the kitchen before going upstairs. Paul lies in bed, illuminated only by moonlight. The crisscross pattern of the trees outside all over the walls of his room. He looks furious. He hears Annie's clumping footfalls as she goes to bed upstairs. Then the sound of her urinating. The flush. In the attic, 2 tiny windows light up like eyes. Paul finally plucks up courage and pulls the blanket back so they can look at his legs. And then he moans aloud in horror. The lower parts of both legs are bound with slim steel rods wrapped up with tape and bandages and wire. His thighs are covered in ugly, dark bruises.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Blackout. Scene 5. The same. A bright winter day. The lights come up on Paul's room. Annie comes into the room in her huge old parka, shaking off snow and producing a paperback from her shopping bag.
They had it in the store. That's why I've been so long. I opened it just to read the first page, and before I knew what had happened, I'd lost myself. And I was on page 50, and I realized you'd probably be screaming out for your pills.
Sure. What have you been reading?
Misery's Child, of course. Stupid. They got the paperback today.
Right. It seems so long since I wrote it. I always think of the hardback release as the time
Well,
the book.
not everybody can afford fancy hardbacks, Mr. Man.
Well, do you like it?
Oh, Paul, I love it. It's as good as all the rest. Better. The best. It more than makes up for that other book.
Thanks.
I knew Misery would marry Rory. And I'm sure Baron Heidsieck will forgive Misery for marrying Rory, even though they were engaged. Does he forgive her? No, don't tell. I want to find out for myself. I'm making it last. It always seems so long before there's another one. I shan't sleep until I finish it. I've brought you chips and candy and extra pills because I'm not going to do anything else until I've read to the end.
That's great. Did you make that call for me in town?
I didn't get the chance. I'm sorry, but it's not every day you get the new Paul Sheldon. Oh, which is your favorite of all the ones you've written?
I don't really have favorites. To be perfectly honest,
I love them all, of course. But if I had to pick one, oh, it's so hard. The one I've read the most, it's got to be Misery Wronged, where she's kidnapped by the awful Black John Weston. And the most exciting is probably Misery in France, where Rory rescued her at the very last minute from the guillotine of the Mad Count Leroux, and they escaped in that big balloon. The most romantic one, no, the scariest one is definitely Misery in Love, where she gets stripped of her title and thrown in the horrible Bedlam hospital by her mad sister, Gwendolyn Chastain. You see, I was a nurse, so I know how terrible those places can be. You're wonderful, Paul. You're just wonderful.
What kind of a nurse were you?
Oh, all kinds. I worked in an old people's home for a few years, but that was very annoying. And then there was all that Denver business.
What was that, Annie?
Oh, tell me what happens, Paul. I've just got to the bit where Misery gets trapped by the gypsy fortune teller who's not really a gypsy fortune teller. Is it Gwendolyn? I'm sure it's that oogie woman. Is it? Is it?
My lips are sealed.
Paul, can I ask you a personal question?
Go right ahead.
Where do you get all your ideas from?
No, it's just that's the question, everyone always asks writers, where do all your ideas come from?
Well, if it's so dumb that you get asked it all the time, then I expect you must have a pretty special answer.
Well, I didn't mean it like that.
No, go right ahead, Paul. I'm all ears. Where do you get all your ideas from?
Well, all kinds of places, things you hear, conversations, other books.
No! Stupid! I mean your special ideas. The ones that make the books come alive.
I don't know. They just somehow come.
Where do you get all your ideas from?
Nowhere!
I won't sleep tonight, Paul. I won't sleep a wink until I finish this. Reading one of your books is like being in love. No. It's better.
Fade to darkness. Scene 6. The same. Night. Outside, the snow is falling. The lights come up on the hall in Paul's room. Annie is reading his book, sitting in the hall. She is actually moving her head as she scans the page, lost in the story, wincing as though what she is reading is actually happening to her. She has a packet of biscuits beside her, and she's cramming them in her mouth without even being aware of it. She drinks straight from a carton of chocolate milk. The TV is on low upstairs on the home shopping channel again. She's forgotten about it. Paul is fast asleep in the bedroom. We just hold on this scene for a few moments. Music and sounds from the old farmhouse. Fade to darkness. After a pause, the light comes up slowly on Annie, who is still sitting in exactly the same place, now surrounded by various empty snack packets. She has been reading all night, and she is now on the very last page of the book. She suddenly begins to inhale like an asthmatic. Something's wrong. She slaps her hand over her mouth like she's been stung. She begins to twist and turn the book in fury, as if she's unconsciously trying to tear the whole book in half.
No! No!
She gets up and storms to the corridor straight into Paul's bedroom. He awakens with a start.
No!
Annie, what is it? Are you all right?
You dirty bird!
What's wrong? What have I done?
She can't be dead. Misery Chastain cannot be dead.
Annie, please listen to me. Just
Dirty bird! You dirty birdie! How could you?
she died giving birth. That often happened in those days. It was a noble sacrifice. She gave her own life for her baby, and Misery's spirit will never die.
I don't want her spirit. I want her. You killed her. You murdered her.
No, I didn't.
Of course not. And if you didn't, Mr. Paul Sheldon, then who did?
No one. She just died.
I thought you were good, but you're not good. You're just a lying old dirty birdie.
Annie, she slipped away. That's all. It was like life when someone just
People
slips.
in stories don't just slip away. You're in charge. You're God. You make everything happen. Oh boy, you must think I was born yesterday. I was a nurse. I know how people die. I had dozens of people die in my own arms.
She blinks out again. For a long time. Stands looking at the wall.
I think I better go now. I don't think I better be around you for a while. I don't think that's wise.
Go? Where?
Place I know. If I stay here, I'll do something unwise. Goodbye, Paul.
Will you be back to give me my medication?
She shuts the door without answering. She goes down the hall like a robot, picking up her parka and the ring of keys hanging up by the door. Annie leaves, double locking the front door. As the lights start to dim, we hear footsteps in the snow and the car driving off. Scene 7. The same. Complete darkness.
I need my novel, Annie. Annie, I'm going to scream out loud if I don't get my novel. I know you're there, so you can come out and stop playing games. God, help me. Oh, please, someone help me.
Dim light comes up on Paul's room. He has wrapped all the sheets around himself in a twisted knot.
You're in trouble. You're in deep shit, but you're gonna get out. You're gonna get out. Come on. Sooner or later, someone's going to come around here. The Roydmans, someone.
He reaches out and picks up an already empty glass on the dresser. He turns it upside down above his mouth and sucks at it, hoping to discover a drop of water he has missed.
She's probably had a crash. She's had a crash. I'm just going to die here of hunger or thirst. Or just pain. Some fucking horse race that'll be. 7-5 on Novel Boy. Annie, are you out there? Are you outside that door, damn you? You made me a junkie with this morphine or codeine or the shitload of elephant dope it is. You at least give me my fix, you bitch!
Dim light. He makes a superhuman effort to try and move, gritting his teeth against the savage pain. When he finally gives up, he lets out a strangled sob, and then succumbs to crying.
They must have found your car by now. There'll be news stories and everything. On a wrecked car halfway down Humbuggy Mountain. Must belong to that famous Paul Sheldon. Must have crawled out in the days, what these creative types are like.
The light is going as he gets weaker.
I need water, and food, and my novel. I need them, Annie. I need them. I don't want to die here.
Darker.
Well, Paul, you always wanted to know what it was like to drink your own piss.
Darkness. Scene 8. The same. 2 days later. Out of the darkness comes glorious, blinding daylight. Annie is standing over Paul, smiling and full of life. She holds a glass of water.
I have a cool, fresh glass of water for you. No, I'm not a mirage.
Paul forces himself to sit up, wincing in agony. He takes a gulp and she has to snatch it back from him.
No, and a little at a time or you'll vomit.
Look, like capsules. The pain. Please. Annie, please, for God's sakes, help me. The pain is so bad.
I know it is, but I had to get away and think. My thoughts are often very muddy, I know that. So I prayed. I said, "Dear God, Paul Sheldon may be dead when I get back." But God said, "No, I have spared him so you can show him the way he must go. I will give you the medication. But first, you have a little job to do."
Annie, don't torment me. Treat me like a human being. I'm in terrible pain.
I know, my dear. Soon.
Paul hears a clattering noise, and Annie wheels in an old metal barbecue into the room. She places it in the corner where he can see it clearly. Paul looks perplexed. Annie suddenly opens the door of the barbecue as though she's revealing a wonderful roast.
Ta-da!
On the grill pan is a stack of scrunched up pages, a funeral pyre of typed pages, and Paul suddenly recognizes it.
Fast cars.
No, Annie, that's the best thing I've ever done.
I beg to differ.
Burn it. Go on. Burn it. You think I haven't bothered to make a copy? I mean, do you know how much I get for writing a book, Annie? You think that's the only copy?
Yes, Paul. I think it's the only copy.
Please.
It's disgusting. That aside, it's also no good.
You wouldn't know good if it walked up and spat in your face.
First of all, good would not spit in my face. Evil might, but not good. Second of all, I do know good when I see it. You're good, Paul. All you need is help.
For Christ's sakes.
Use all the profanity you want. I've heard it all before.
No. I won't do it. No.
When you burn it, then I'll give you the capsules. A double dose because it's been so long. All the pain will vanish. You'll begin to feel serene. And I'll change your bedding. I see you've wet it, and it must be uncomfortable. I'll also change you. And by then you'll probably be hungry.
I am hungry. I'm starving.
And I'll give you some soup, some thick, buttery toast. But until you burn that book, Paul, I can do nothing.
I hate you.
Oh, yes. That's what a child says. He says, Mommy, I hate you. You're mean. And the mother feels bad, but she knows she's right. And she does her duty, as I am doing mine. Well, Paul?
No.
It's with the trash, Paul, because that's where it belongs. I can come back tomorrow if you like, although I rather suspect you may go into a coma before too long.
No!
Well, you are a stubborn little boy. I'll drop by tomorrow to see if you've changed your mind.
All right. All right, burn it then.
Oh, no, I can't do it, as much as I'd like to spare you the agony.
Why not? Why ever not?
Because you must do it of your own free will.
Why are you making me do this?
I'm not making you do anything. It's your own free will.
Finally, Paul opens the box of matches. He lights one. He moves it underneath the page and holds it there until it catches light.
Good boy.
She places the page in the barbecue carefully so that it will set light to the other pages.
Good boy.
As it burns, she stares at it like a child who has accidentally set a fire.
Goodness. Oh, boy.
Paul's masterpiece burns up in front of his eyes. Annie checks that everything is burning smoothly. Then she gives him his tablets. Slow fade to darkness. Scene 9. The same. Very early Christmas morning. Christmas carols. Tiny lights come up on a silver Christmas tree in Paul's room. Around it are several presents, all wrapped. It's still dark outside. Annie's standing above his bed.
What time is it?
She suddenly blows a cracker whistle in Paul's face.
It's 5:30.
In the morning?
Now she's off and rooting around the bottom of the Christmas tree like a pig looking for truffles, feeling the packages.
I know it's early, but it's Christmas and I just couldn't wait. This is so exciting. Paul, look, what's this?
To Annie with special love from Paul.
I knew you couldn't really get me anything, but that doesn't matter. We'll pretend. So, what have you got me?
It's a surprise. I just hope you like it.
She opens the wrapping paper to reveal a tin smoker, a little can with a nozzle and small bellows attached for subduing bees with smoke.
Why, Paul, it's a new smoker for my bees. You must have known my old one was coming to pieces. You are thoughtful. It's beautiful. You are so good. A present deserves a present in return. This is your big present. I put it in here last night while you were asleep. To Paul, festive greetings and love from Annie.
It's a wheelchair. The chair part has been ridiculously wrapped in Christmas paper, and there's a bow on the backrest. She puts it right by his bed.
We need you mobile now. You're getting better, don't we?
Yeah, sure. What for particularly?
So you can sit up at the table, dummy. Because what else is there under the tree? Oh my, what could this be? It's certainly heavy enough. Have you guessed? Do you know what it is?
To the greatest writer in the world from his #1 fan.
That's me. Open it.
Okay.
He opens the package to reveal an old, ugly black typewriter.
It's a royal. God, it's a real antique.
I know it's secondhand, but it's good secondhand.
I didn't mean anything. Hey, a good typewriter lasts forever. It's great.
I got it at Pen to Paper. Isn't that a stupid name for a store? But Nancy Dartmonger, who runs it, is a very stupid woman. Dartmonger. Her name ought to be Whoremonger. Divorced twice, and now she's living with a bartender. That's why, when you said it looks like an antique...
No, it looks fine. Really, I love it.
She wanted $45, but she gave me $5 off because of the missing N. See, there's no N. It's missing one of its teeth.
What does that matter?
Well, I told her N was an important letter. It's one of the letters in my favorite writer's name.
Well, it's 2 of the letters in my favorite nurse's name.
You fooler.
Annie, I heard the TV up in your bedroom. Gosh, I really miss keeping in touch with what's going on in the world and everything. I don't suppose, as it's Christmas, you could bring it down here today and maybe we could...
No, without breaking my back, Paul. I couldn't. It's not exactly a portable.
Right. I was just wondering if there had been anything on the local news about my disappearance. I mean, it seems so strange all these weeks and no one's coming looking for me. They haven't, have they? Maybe another phone call would just...
Paul,
that might...
I'm getting really sick and tired of this. I told you. I rang your agent's office and I left this number. And if she doesn't want to call you back, then that's not my problem, is it?
No, but maybe another phone
Well,
call.
is it my problem?
I guess not.
Thank you. Boy, we haven't finished with your presents. I've got you some writing paper. Oh, now I've spoiled the surprise. Never mind. Open it. I'll set everything up and we'll have a regular little writer's den. Well?
Great. What will you write? What will I write, do you think?
Oh, but Paul, I don't think. I know. You're going to write a new novel, your best novel, Misery's Return. It'll be my reward for nursing you back to health. And you can start today.
But Annie, it's Christmas Day. You were going to bring down the TV and we were going to play cards and everything, weren't we?
Do you know how much I've spent on your Christmas?
Look, Misery is dead. I'm sorry, but that's just the
Even
fact.
when I was mad at you, I knew she wasn't really dead. You couldn't really kill her because you're good. In fact, we're going to find out just how good you are, Mr. Man. We'll set up your new typewriter at the table.
I don't know if I can even sit in that wheelchair.
Well, let's see, shall we?
Look, I don't know. I'm pretty heavy.
She leans over and grabs him under the arms, locking her arms around his back.
Don't be a baby. You think this is the first time I put a man in a wheelchair?
It is agony for him. He grits his teeth as she lifts him across and then lowers him into the chair.
Yes, I know it hurts. It will hurt. Maybe an awful lot to start with. But there'll come a day soon when it'll hurt a little less. And a little less.
He tries to get comfortable as she arranges his pinned legs so they look right.
Good as new. Almost. And now you've got your mobility. I know you won't abuse my trust.
No, of course not. Annie, will you promise me one thing?
Of course.
If I write this story for you...
Novel. A great big one like the others. Maybe even bigger.
Okay. If I write this novel for you, will you let me go when it's done?
You talk like I'm keeping you prisoner. I guess that by the time you finish, you should be up to the strain of meeting people again. Is that what you wanted to hear?
That's what I wanted to hear.
Well, honestly, I knew writers were supposed to have big egos, but I didn't realize how ungrateful they were.
I'll need all the other books if you got them so I can cross-check dates.
If I've got them. Are you joking? Oh, I am going to bind Misery's Return myself. A hardback. There's lots of candy in your stocking, but don't fill up. because in a couple of hours, I'll be in with the biggest turkey dinner you ever saw, with bacon and sugared potatoes and sweet applesauce and peas cooked in orange juice. It's already sizzling away.
Annie, in 2 hours, it'll be 8 o'clock in the morning.
You'll be hungry when you smell it. And I've got pumpkin pie with strawberry ice cream because you've been such a good boy. You can even have an extra Christmas pill if you need it. Because you have to be strong to work. You'll mend faster when you're working. I'll bet. I'll go out now so you can put on your thinking cap. This is so exciting. Don't you think so?
Annie? I'm afraid I can't start today.
Oh?
This paper's no good.
But it's the most expensive. Nancy said so in pen to paper.
Well, didn't your mother ever tell you the most expensive is not always the best?
No, she did not. What she told me, Mr. Smart Guy, is that when you buy cheap, you get cheap.
You might as well stop that. Getting mad won't change the paper.
You're trying to trick me because you don't want to write my book. I knew you would. Oh, boy.
If you give me a pencil, I'll show you what the problem is.
She brings one over and slams it down on the dresser. It's all chewed and horrible.
You see how it smudges? Ribbon ink will do just the same thing.
Oh, and you're going to sit and rub every page with your thumb, are you?
Well, when you're working, you're always hunting back to find a name or a date. Look, just the shift of the papers will blur everything. Editors hate crossable paper. It's one of the first things you learn in the business.
Don't call it that.
What?
A business? Your talent is a gift from God.
Sorry.
You ought to be. You might as well call yourself a whore.
Good point. Now, getting back to the paper.
I'll get your cockadoodie paper. Just tell me what to get.
We want it to look good for a publisher. That's
I
all.
told you I'm binding it myself.
Annie, I'm on your side here.
Don't make me laugh. No one's been on my side since my mother died.
Look, a book should last a lifetime. Annie, if I write on this paper, it's
You
not
don't
even
need to
going to
talk
last.
anymore. What kind?
Ask for a ream of long gray Mimeo. Hammermill Bond is good, or Triad Modern. It'll cost much less, and obviously...
I'll go right now.
You don't have to do that. The Crucible is fine to start with. After all, I'm have to rewrite everything anyway.
Oh,
So...
no, Paul. Only an idiot would start good work with a bad tool.
But it's Christmas. The store will be closed.
Nancy lives above the store. I'll get her to open up, especially for you. I'm sure she won't mind a bit, even if she's in the middle of cooking her Christmas dinner for all her family and all her relatives, because nothing is too much trouble for you, Paul. Nothing. I know you want to get started just as soon as you can since you're on my side, so I'm not even going to take the time to put you back in bed or give you your pills.
Annie, really, I can start if you'll just...
I know I look slow and stupid, but I am not stupid, Paul, and I am certainly not slow.
Suddenly, she rushes back across the room with the paper and brings it smashing down on his knees. Paul screams like he's never screamed in the whole of his adult life.
You can sit there and you can scream if you want to, because no one can hear you.
She walks to the door and then turns again. He screams in anticipation, which only makes her grin more widely.
Nobody stops here because they all know Annie Wilkes is crazy. They think I got away with it, and they're right. Think about that, Paul, while I'm in town getting your cockadoodie paper. And if your turkey's black as tar, you'll still eat every piece, even if I have to shove it down your throat. You've spoiled Christmas.
Annie leaves, slamming the front door. Paul hears the clicks as she locks it. He tries to hold his legs, but he can't even touch them. It's so painful. It's like they're horribly burnt.
Please, God, get me out of this.
He hears another door slam and the car start up and drive away. He leans back in his chair, shaking all over. He puts his head in his hands.
Come on, Paul. Come on, she's crazy. She's going to kill you. Come on.
He grits his teeth and grabs the wheels, pushes himself forward towards the door, crying out at the effort of moving himself with hands that have grown weak. He gives up after 2 pushes.
Come on! You're one phone call away from getting out of here.
He starts up again and steers the wheelchair just through the doorway and into the hall. He's in great pain.
I just cannot believe the guts of this Sheldon kid today. Nobody in the Annie Wilkes Stadium believed he had a chance of getting that old wheelchair going through that old after the blow he took. But yes, look at him go. Sheldon's going for the gold in the Special Olympics.
He sees a black telephone at the far end of the hall. He wheels himself slowly down the hall and finally lifts the phone. He listens.
Shit.
He pulls at the lead, expecting it to come away in his hand, but it's securely plugged into the wall socket. Then he slowly turns the whole phone upside down and sees there are no insides.
Good thinking, Annie. No insides. No nasty bills to pay.
He starts to turn the chair around and suddenly freezes. A car is approaching.
She's coming back. She's coming back.
He starts to shake. He'll never get back to his room in time. He listens in horror as the car gets louder and louder, and then passes without stopping.
Take that as a warning. Get back in bed.
He sets off again. Each movement is a marathon.
Just as soon as we've had a little novel burger to dull the pain. Where's my novel, Annie? Come on, be a sport. Where do you keep them?
He pushes open another door in the hall and wheels down to the bathroom. He's panting like he's run up a mountain. Once inside, he pulls on the dangling light switch, illuminating the room with a naked bulb.
Jesus. You little squirrel.
The tiny room is piled high with stolen drugs. It looks like a mini pharmacy.
All right, where are they then? Where do you keep Polly's novel? Come on.
He scans the shelves. Then he sees them just out of reach. He braces himself by gripping one side of the chair with his left hand, then tries to push his whole body up so he can reach them with his other hand. The shelf is at full stretch and his left hand is shaking wildly as he tries to hold his weight. He's almost crying with the pain. He gets a finger to the packets, then he collapses back into the chair and clutches his knees, face contorted.
I need my pills.
He tries again, straining in agony as he half stands out of the chair, grinding his teeth in pain. As he finally reaches the novel, closing his fingers around the bottle, he blacks out. We slowly fade out, with Paul slumped unconscious in his wheelchair. Scene 10, the same, later that morning. The lights come up on the hall, bathroom, and Paul's room. Paul's asleep in the bathroom. In the distance, we hear the four-wheel drive coming back. We hear it stop, then the footsteps in the snow approaching the door. Keys go into two locks. Paul suddenly jerks awake like somebody's put 50,000 volts through him. For a few seconds, he is completely paralyzed with fear. Annie comes in the door, carrying his paper.
I've got your paper. Boy, I hope you appreciate all the trouble you've put me through.
She takes off her coat and hangs it in the hall, then slips off her boots. Paul reaches up and yanks the light switch off as Annie walks back down the hall. She goes towards his room, but then she walks upstairs instead.
Nancy was still wallowing in bed, but that's not surprising. I didn't exactly think she'd be on her knees in church.
Annie disappears upstairs. Paul frantically wheels back through the hall, pulling the bathroom door shut behind him.
I had to hammer on the front door for about 5 minutes before she came down, half dressed and probably half drunk. She was effing and blinding and telling me I was crazy, but she opened the store eventually. That whore would open her mother's coffin for $5.
Paul wheels backwards down the hall and into his room, pushing the door shut as Annie comes back down, now wearing her slippers.
Paul, have you gone back to sleep? I hope that turkey's all right for your sake, because you're going to eat it even if it isn't.
Annie enters his room as Paul is still backing away from the door.
This had better be the right paper. You're dripping with sweat. What have you been doing?
Paul doesn't know what to say. He's out of breath.
Answer me. What have you been doing?
I've been suffering, as you well know.
Has it been very bad?
I tried to get back in bed, but I couldn't. This chair really hurts.
Well, I told you about making me mad. Live and learn. Isn't that what they say? Well, if you live, I guess you'll learn.
Can I have my pills now?
In a minute. First, I want to make sure there's nothing else stupid old Nurse Wilkes forgot because she doesn't know how a smart guy goes about writing a book. I want to make sure you don't need me to go back to town to get you a special novel writer's tape recorder or maybe a pair of writing slippers or something like that. Because if you want me to, I'll go. Your wish is my command. I won't even wait to give you your pills. I'll hop right into old Bessie again and go. So what do you say, Mr. Smart Guy? You all set?
I'm all set, Annie. Please, just.
And you won't make me mad anymore?
No, I won't make you mad anymore.
Paul, why are you holding your hands like that?
He looks down and realizes he's still clutching the novel bottle, covering it with his hands.
I asked you a question.
I want my urinal. I held it in all the time you were gone, Annie, but I can't any longer, and I don't want to wet myself again.
You poor dear. Annie's put you through a lot, hasn't she? Too much. Mean old Annie. I'll get it right away. And your pills.
As soon as she goes out, he wheels back and stuffs the pills under the mattress, then wheels back as Annie returns with a urinal and his novel. He greedily swallows the pills. She holds out the urinal.
You need help?
I can do it.
He half turns the chair away from her. He takes the glass urinal. She pretends to look away. Next door, Jingle Bells starts up on the radio. She stands there, smiling as he urinates. The lights dim slowly. Curtain. Act 2. Spring. Scene 1. The farmhouse. Day. The lights come up on Paul's room. It's the beginning of spring. All the snow is gone and we can see the farmhouse more clearly. With the snow gone, the tree outside Paul's window looks like half house, half tree. Hanging in the tree is a large, sticky beehive. Annie has moved Paul's bed and brought in a table for him to work at by the window. Unfortunately, it is positioned so the door is behind it, and he cannot see when she enters the room in her silent nurse's manner. Paul is much stronger now and moves more easily. He is in his wheelchair, holding a small sheaf of papers and facing a very excited Annie.
Misery's Return, Chapter 1, Rebirth. Rory Carmichael burst into the huge kitchen of his manor house on the banks of Loch Dunthorpe, announcing his homecoming by hurling a brace of pheasants onto an ancient kitchen table. He ripped off his soaking shirt and let it drop carelessly on the floor, running his strong fingers through his sopping blonde hair. You could hear the strains of Chopin from the great hall beyond, and suddenly the moisture running down his masculine cheeks was not rainwater, but tears, as the memory of Misery's labor had been long and brutal. But it was only when the midwife had urged Rory to ride for the doctor, when he had realized his darling wife was near death. Her terrible screaming would be forever etched on his heart. As Rory now strode manfully towards the great hall, he gave silent thanks for the healthy cry of his son upstairs, and he smiled to himself as he heard the comforting lullaby sung by Annie Wilkes Surely the best children's nurse in the whole of Scotland. As Rory entered the great hall, Misery arose from behind the grand piano and breathlessly rushed into his arms. Rory held her like a precious jewel, her chestnut hair cascading over him in gorgeous profusion. He simply couldn't bear to contemplate what life would be like if he had arrived with the doctor even 5 minutes later on that terrible night 2 months ago, or if the experimental blood transfusion had not worked, in which he had so bravely sliced open his forearm and poured his life's blood into Misery's depleted veins. "My darling," said Misery, and
Paul.
What's wrong?
I think you know what's wrong.
Don't you like it? It's exactly what you wanted.
It's a cheat. Oh, it's beautiful, Paul. But it's still a dirty cheat.
Why?
Rory rode for the doctor at the end of Misery's child. That bit's right. But the doctor never came because Rory's horse tripped on that rotten Mr. Grigger's toll gate. And Rory broke his ribs and lay there all night in the rain. So the doctor never came. You see?
No, I don't see. It's Misery, just like you asked me for.
Oh boy. You must think I'm awful stupid.
No, I don't.
When I was a girl, I used to go to the movies every Saturday. What I liked best were the chapter plays. Rocket Man was my favorite. Each week, it ended with him in terrible trouble, unconscious in a crashing plane, or tied to a chair in a burning warehouse, or about to get fried up with 10,000 volts shoved through him. And then it stopped, and you spent the whole week wondering how he'd get out. Like when he was unconscious in the airplane, he came around and found a parachute under his seat, and then he jumped out, and that was fair enough. Better?
Yeah. Thanks.
Can I go on now, Paul, or were you planning on having a sneezing fit? Should I get the bucket? Do you think you might have to vomit a few times?
No, Annie, please. Go on.
But when he found the parachute, well, maybe it wasn't realistic, but it was fair. But there was this episode where the bad guys put Rocket Man in a car with no brakes and welded all the doors shut and pushed him down a mountain, a twisty mountain road, ending up in this huge cliff. And there was poor old Rocket Man trying to stop the car and steer and open the door all at the same time. And then the car went over the cliff and it hit the rocks and burst into flame and went into the ocean. Oh boy, I was on the edge of my seat, I can tell you. The next week, I was waiting outside the theater 2 hours before it opened. The episode always started with the end of the last one. Rocket Man was racing down the hill, just like before, banging on the door trying to open it. And then, just before the car got to the edge, the door opened and he rolled out onto the road. And all the kids in the theater cheered, but not me. I was mad. That wasn't what happened last week. That isn't what happened. Are you all too stupid to remember? Did you all get amnesia? That was a dirty cheat. He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car. It went over the edge and he was still inside. Do you understand?
Yes.
Do you understand that?
Yes, Annie. Yes.
Then you know what's wrong.
I suppose I do.
Then you better fix it. And you better fix it by tomorrow night, because I've had enough of all of your excuses.
Blackout. Scene 2. The same. Day. Before the lights come up on Paul's room, we hear something that sounds like a gunshot. Then another. Then several in rapid succession. A machine gun scatter, and then the sound changes and we finally recognize it as rapid typing. Paul is trying to work at his desk. He suddenly stops, looks at what he's written, and shakes his head.
Come on, Paul. Get inspired. Get fucking inspired. Whew. You've got to cut down on all the dope you're taking, Paul, or you give yourself a bad habit. A worse habit, you junkie. Only not today. Let's Just wait until you get a chapter your #1 critic actually likes. You thought that Fast Cars was good, Paul? It was cockadoodie. Rory had never really accepted that Misery was dead, nor forgiven himself for not shit. Okay. What we've got here is a lot of talk and white space.
He starts typing again, the sound of his typing getting louder and louder as the lights fade slowly to blackout. Scene 3. Paul's room. Night. Outside, it's a windy night, and we can hear creaking and noises from the house and the other farm buildings. Paul is sitting up in bed, looking nervous. Annie is sitting in a chair, eating honey from a jar, dipping a knife in and licking it clean.
Misery's Return by Paul Sheldon. Chapter 1, Voices from the Grave. For a moment, Rory was not sure who the trembling figure in the darkness was. "Oh, sir, please forgive me disturbing ye at this late hour, for I could nae sleep." It was only when the terrified old man shuffled into the light of the doorway that Rory recognized him as Smeggs, the village gravedigger. Only 3 days previously, Rory had watched Smeggs shovel wet earth on poor Misery's coffin after the heartbreaking funeral service. "It's a noise in the churchyard, sir. Horrible scratching sounds. Her ladyship rests not easy."
The wind outside becomes subtly mixed with other sounds from the story. A barn owl, nails scratching wood. Annie has stopped eating.
Rory dispatched Smeggs back into the night, telling him not to be so stupid. But less than 5 minutes later, after almost gagging on a giant tumbler of malt, he had hitched up the horses and was riding the pony trap through the dark night. His ribs were still agony from where the doctor had taped them up after he fell from his horse. On that rotten Mr. Grigger's toll gate.
Now we can hear the sound of the pony and trap. Again, so subtle underneath the noise of the wind that we might almost be imagining it.
Smeg's words alone could not have put Rory into his present state of terror. But when the local doctor had examined poor Misery's body, he had said something very queer. "It's not a bit like Charlotte Evelyn Hyde. I've satisfied myself of that."
Who's Charlotte Evelyn Hyde? She's not in the other Misery books.
Do you want me to read, or do you want to ask questions?
No. Sorry, Paul. Read on.
Charlotte Evelyn Hyde had been found dead in her back garden. The doctor had pronounced it to be a heart attack, although the girl was only 18. 4 days after she was buried, the village prostitute, Miss Roydman, had staggered drunkenly through the graveyard and tripped over something white on the ground. She shrieked like a banshee when she realized it was a hand, the torn fingers thrusting up hideously through the earth of the fresh grave. Poor Charlotte had clearly fallen into some death-like coma, only to wake and find herself buried alive. She had tried to dig herself out. As this awful memory came back to him, Rory jerked the horses to a halt outside the gates of the graveyard.
We hear the horses being pulled to a halt, footsteps racing across a gravel footpath, and the tolling of a church bell. Annie is now jigging in her chair like a kid who needs to go to the toilet.
He rushed to Misery's tombstone as the church clock hammered midnight. He threw himself on the ground and forced his ear against the earth. For what seemed like an eternity, he remained motionless, listening. And then suddenly, he heard the sound of weak hands clawing at wood deep below, and he let out a single breathless sob. "Misery! Misery, I'm here! Hold on, my darling!"
Paul puts down the pages, and the wind outside dies down.
Well, is it fair?
Oh, yes. Yes, it's fair. It's wonderful. But Paul, it's so gruesome. That poor woman who scraped the ends of her fingers off. It's not like the other misery books.
Well, I don't know, Annie. Maybe it's not right. Maybe I should tear it up.
I'll kill you if you do. I have to know what happens next. I want a new chapter every night, like the cliffhangers.
I can't write a whole new chapter every night, Annie. That's too much work.
You can! Like that girl who has to make up a new story each night for 1,000 million nights.
Barazotti?
Then I can help too. I'll fill in all the missing ends. I won't peek. I'll do it with my eyes squidged half shut. Oh, read it again, Paul!
I'm pretty tired right now, if that's all right. I have been working all day and half of last night.
Of course. I'll leave you alone. Oh, Paul, I'm so excited. Maybe it was a bee.
What?
That made it look like she was dead? She could have been stung by a bee, but everyone thought she died in childbirth. One person in 12 is allergic to bee venom, and sometimes they cause a comatose state. In fact, a bee could have been why that other woman, Charlotte, was buried alive as well.
Oh yeah, two unrelated women in the same village were both buried alive within 6 months because of bee stings.
Well, you're the writer.
Nice of you to say so.
Paul, just forget I said anything.
Now wait a minute. They could be related. Yes, it would work if they were related. Charlotte is really Misery's sister. Or half-sister, that would work better. And the bees affected both of them because they're both related.
Did I help? Did I?
Here, bring me a pencil. Maybe they've got the same hair or something. Shit, maybe someone else in the village knows that Misery was buried alive.
He starts scribbling notes, falling into his world. The lights fade to blackout. Scene 4. The same. Day. Lights up on Paul's room. Outside, it's pouring with rain, a dark, dull day. The table lamp is on, and Paul is typing fast at his desk, talking aloud his thoughts as he writes them down. We hear the sounds of a large schooner at sea, and begin to see the outline of the schooner's rigging, high in his room, moving as if in the wind.
Throughout the voyage, Misery lay in her hammock, half alive, half dead, slipping into cataleptic trances at the slightest... No. Rory knew that if she were ever to be stung by another bee... Ever stung? Good, yes. Ever to be stung, she would die... She would die instantly. No. She would... Misery would either be killed or cured instantly.
He scans the pages, making faces, and then accepts it. He starts typing again. Annie shuffles into the room behind him. Her hair is greasy and unwashed. She is wearing her housecoat and slippers, which are covered in food stains. There are marks on her arms and face, and she is clutching something in her hand. The sounds fade.
This is good, Annie. I'm cooking. We'll have something really special for you tonight.
Here.
She throws his pills absent-mindedly at him. As the pills clatter on the desk, he looks up for the first time and immediately gets scared.
Annie? Are you all right?
No.
I've almost finished. I'm just rewriting the last bit. Would you like your story early today? Here, sit down on the bed. Go on. You remember how we left things last night? Yeah, you do. You know, Rory and Misery boarded the Lorelei, the schooner for the trip to Africa.
Continent.
Yeah, to Africa. Shall I read on? Less than 100 miles inland from Lawstown, the Dutch settlement on the northern tip of the Barbary coast, lived the Burkas, Africa's most feared native tribe, known as the Bee People.
The sounds of an African port drift in.
It took 3 days before Rory found a guide who would take them to Burka country. A giant Negro called Hezekiah, who flashed 7 gold teeth every time he smiled. He told,
Annie suddenly gets up.
Annie, I'm not finished.
She stands in the corner of the room, her head pressed against the wall. Paul waits a second and then decides to carry on.
He told fabulous tales of a huge woman's face carved in stone, jutting from the side of a crumbling cliff, a merciless face with a huge ruby set in her stone forehead.
Annie suddenly slaps herself around the face. Paul looks at her, horrified. She slaps herself again, hard.
Behind the idol's mouth was a honeycomb of caves.
Annie slaps herself again.
Where a hive of giant albino bees lived.
Annie slaps herself. Paul gives up trying to read.
Annie, you're very sick. I really think you should go into town and see a doctor.
When I found it, it was still struggling. Now it's at peace, I guess. They come into the cellar when it rains. Poor things.
She turns around and opens her hand. She's carrying a little rat in her hand, dangling from a small wooden trap. She drops it down into his lap, right on the page he is reading from.
I suppose you think of escaping. Can't. But we could both go together.
She blinks out.
I'm going into the shed to get my shotgun now, and I'm going to come back and put it in your mouth and pull the trigger. Then I'll turn it on myself. Maybe the next world's better than this one.
No! Annie, you want me to finish the book, don't you?
Misery?
Of course, misery, yes. I agree. The world is a pretty awful place. Especially when it rains. I mean, I've been in a lot of pain these last weeks, and, you know...
Pain? You don't know what pain is. You haven't the slightest idea.
No, I suppose not. Not compared to you.
That's right.
But you want to know how the story turns out, don't you?
It's the only thing in the world I still want. I have this place I go when I feel like this, in the hills. You remember when Brer Rabbit telling Brer Fox about his laughing place? It has a wooden sign above the door which says, Annie's laughing place. I made it. Sometimes I do laugh when I go there. But mostly I just scream.
Blackout. The rain gets louder. Scene 5. The same. Night. The lights come up on Paul's room, the hall, and kitchen. Paul is in his wheelchair, negotiating it through the bedroom doorway, then wheeling along the dark hall. Outside, we can hear the pouring rain and the thunder of a big storm. The farm animals are frightened. Paul wheels down the hall, past the door to the bathroom. There are no lights apart from the lightning, flashing on and off. As he reaches the bottom of the hall, he sees a small bookcase. There's a little light, which he turns on.
Jesus.
The light illuminates a kind of weird shrine. All Paul's books, and above them, dozens of faded magazine and newspaper cuttings stuck to the wall. In the center is a big, glossy, signed photograph of Paul in a horrible, cheap frame. If it was once treasured, it has now been vandalized, and a fist-sized blow has shattered the glass right through the middle of his face.
Your popularity is slipping, Paul. Number 2 fan and falling.
He turns and looks back at the front door. He thinks about going back to his room. She could return at any minute. Then he decides to go on forward. He wheels around the corridor and into the tiny kitchen, every bit as filthy and neglected as the bathroom. Flashes of lightning illuminate the dark room, on and off, just like the light in the hall before. Sweet foods and unwashed plates are haphazardly stuck across the room. He goes to the back door, which has metal mesh to strengthen it. He tries the handle, shaking it violently before realizing there's no chance of getting out.
I'm not going to give up. Come on, Paul. When she comes back, she's going to kill you.
He looks around the room for ideas.
Poison her. Enough novel crunched up in her breakfast cereal. She'd go unconscious and then... Oh, but she'd taste it. She's not stupid. Look, you've got to get out of here before she gets back. Light a fire. Burn the place down. That'll bring somebody. But what if it takes too long? Fuck, I'll end up like that Christmas turkey. Fuck it! Fuck it, fuck it, fuck it!
He sees the drawer by the cooker. He opens it and looks inside. Then he makes a momentous decision.
Do it. You have to do it.
He takes out a huge kitchen knife. Massive thunder and lightning directly overhead.
When she comes back, you ask for a glass of water. And then, it's because you're so thirsty. You're in bed because you're so weak. And then, she bends over, and it's the law of the jungle, Master Rory.
Another big flash of lightning and blackout. Scene 6. The same. Night. Silence, except for a quiet trickle of water dripping off the roof. The storm is over. Paul is fast asleep in bed. A powerful flashlight suddenly comes on. Paul slowly wakes up. Annie has some kind of trolley at the bottom of his bed, and she has placed the flashlight on top so it shines on Paul's face.
Did I ever tell you what lovely eyes you have? That I suppose other women have. Women who are much prettier than me, and much bolder about their affections as well.
I was dreaming about Africa.
She suddenly injects him with a hypodermic.
Annie, what are you doing? What's happening?
Whatever it is, it's already rushing through Paul.
Oh, boy, whatever this stuff is, it's great. Makes that novel look like...
The huge narcotic hits him properly.
Ooh, this is crystal top. Oh, God, this is walking on clouds in a fucking Rolls Royce. This is...
What do you want first, Paul? The good news or the bad news?
Good news first. Guess you don't like the book much. Yeah, too bad. I tried.
I love the book, Paul. You know that.
Oh, you love the book, so you can't be going to kill me, so there can't be any bad news. Oh, boy, am I stoned.
The good news is that your car is gone. I was very worried about it. Now the snow has melted, but the storms must have washed it into the river. It's gone. Poof! That's good news. Now that your car's gone, it means you can really stay and finish my book. But do you want to stay? That's the question I have to ask myself. And as much as I want to pull the wool over my eyes, I know the answer to that one. When I was 11, my whole family were killed in a fire. All except me, Paul. Do you have any idea what that feels like?
I guess not.
You guess not. I've had more tragedy than one person can bear. They put me with a horrible, mean family. It's not very Christian to say so, but I was glad when my stepfather died of food poisoning. When I was studying for my nursing exams, my roommate had what they called a freak fall. That was certainly the right word to describe her. Freak. She only fell one flight, but it was a stone floor. I called the hospital, but
Wow. Look at the moon coming through the window.
I got jobs in geriatric wards, St. Joseph's, Riverview, and other places. You have no idea how foul old people can be, Paul, when they're sick and nothing you do is right. A lot of them died. An awful lot.
I'm sorry. I'm drifting off.
I preferred being a maternity nurse. And I was very good. Very good, Paul, whatever they say. But there were more incidents. And then, would you believe it, they put me on trial for one of the babies who died. Some girl who wasn't even old enough to have a proper name. The press had a name for me, though. Oh, yes. They called me the Dragon Lady. The police had one hand mark on the girl's throat that was like mine. Like mine, that was all. And they also said I had always been on duty when the deaths occurred. Well, what does that prove? You tell me, what does that prove?
Nothing.
Nothing at all. There were millions and billions of times when I was on duty and nothing happened. Also, I don't believe babies are ensouled. Anyway, I was found innocent.
Oh, well, that's good.
Everyone I ever loved dies, Paul. It's as simple as that. You know what kept me going all the time I was sitting in that holding cell in Denver? Misery. I read all your books again, cover to cover. If it hadn't been for you, I think I would have taken my own life, Paul. So when I found you in the snow, it wasn't a coincidence at all, was it? It was a real miracle.
Best thing that ever happened to me.
You remember when I went into town because your writing paper wasn't good enough? That was when you went out the first time, wasn't it? And don't try to tell me you haven't been out, because all the hairs are broken.
Hairs?
You can use cotton, but I used hairs from my head. If they're broken, you know someone's been snooping. Not that I was surprised. I knew you'd been out. I've known for a long, long time. That's the bad news.
Oh.
You wanted your pills. I should have known you'd do anything to get them. But when I get mad, I get, oogie. I checked the bathroom and I thought some had gone, but I wasn't sure. How many times have you been out in all?
Twice.
Please tell the truth, Paul.
That's all. Two times. Just to get water and pills.
Oh, and you didn't try the telephone either time, I suppose, or look at the locks? Let me tell you, Paul, I've stretched strands of hair all over this house, and they've all been snapped. In the hallway, in my bedroom, upstairs, in the shed outside.
How could I get upstairs, Annie?
He lurches forward, stoned, and tries to grab the knife he has hidden.
Looking for this? I checked under the mattress before I gave you your pre-op anesthetic. I expected to find capsules, but the knife was a complete shock. I almost slit myself in two. But you didn't put it there, did you?
What do you mean, anesthetic?
Damn you! God damn you! How many times? I say it was 7. At least 7. Was it 7?
I don't.
I can see you mean to be stubborn. I guess people like you get so used to lying for a living that you just can't stop doing it in real life. But that's all right, because the principle doesn't change. If you were out 7 times or 70 or 70 times 7, the principle doesn't change, and neither does the response. Have you ever read about the early days at the Kimberley diamond mines, Paul? Sometimes the black workers stole diamonds, poked them up their rectums. Do you know what you British did to them if they got caught?
Killed them, I guess.
Oh no, that's like junking an expensive car just because of a broken spring. They made sure that they could go on working, but they also made sure they'd never run away again. The operation was called Hobbling, Paul, and that's what I'm going to do to you.
She rips the bedclothes right off, exposing his twisted legs.
No. No. Annie, please. No.
But she has that slack, vacant look in her eyes. She bends down and picks up a small propane torch and puts it down on the dresser by the matches.
What the fuck is that for?
I can't suture, there'll be no time. And a tourniquet's no good, no central pressure point. I've got to cauterize.
She turns off the flashlight, leaving him in the pitch black. He hears her go to the door.
Annie, I'll stay right here. I won't ever get out of bed again, please. Oh, please don't.
The stroboscope light starts flickering on and off as Annie comes straight back in, holding a massive rusty axe.
Just a little pain, then this nasty business will be behind us.
Paul is screaming, trying to turn away from her, to draw up his legs.
Annie, please don't. Please don't. Annie, I swear, help me, God. Help me, God. Please give me a chance. Help me, God. I swear to God, Annie, please let me be good.
Don't be a crybaby like the others.
She grips the axe carefully and spreads her legs like a logger. The stroboscope light is blinking on and off with ever longer periods of darkness, so we're only ever seeing a flash for 1 second in every 5.
Please don't hurt me.
Keep still, I must do this properly.
The axe comes down into his legs on the blackout. Screaming. Darkness. Screaming. Screaming. After 10 seconds of darkness, a second of illumination. Now the bed and the axe are covered in blood. She's lifting it and swinging again. Darkness. Paul screams loud enough to crack the walls.
Oh, for goodness sakes, I'm a trained nurse.
Screams and music. Screams in the darkness. Silence. After 15 seconds of darkness, a second of light.
Just get rid of the trash.
She picks up something that looks like a foot and drops it in the yellow floor bucket. Paul is beyond screaming. He's unconscious.
Now you're hobbled. And don't you blame me. Stay still while I cauterize.
Scene 7. The same. The sound of chopin. Bees in the hive. Typing. We gradually fade up to see fresh flowers on the table in Paul's room. The music is coming from a radio on Paul's desk. It is a glorious day and summer can't be far away. We can hear Annie a long way off, outside by the barn.
Come on, Misery, eat your feed. Pig, 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 pig.
As Paul types, he talks to himself, occasionally whistling a few bars of the music. His hair is wild, and he's wearing a stained t-shirt. If you saw him walking towards you on the street, you'd cross over. He's grinning, and he looks as crazy as she is.
Roll out those lazy, hazy, crazy days of summer. You're doing well, Paul. In fact, you're doing remarkably well for a man who couldn't write if he had a little headache or he didn't have a cigarette. Perhaps you should come to Annie's house every year to write.
He moves his wheelchair to stretch. We see one foot is no longer there, just a slack trouser leg tied with string. He rereads what he's written.
Misery, misery, misery. Misery's Return will be available in a strictly limited edition of 1, bound in the author's skin.
He starts to type again and then curses. He carefully inserts his fingers like tweezers into the typewriter and pulls out a broken T hammer.
T. No N, and now no T. T, my God! It's the second most common letter in the English language. I'm going to complain to management. I am not just going to ask for a new typewriter. I am going to demand a new one.
Annie suddenly appears outside and grins through the window, gives him the thumbs up.
I can't hear you working very hard.
He grins back at her and returns the gesture. She goes off again, and he spies on her.
No. Better not to ask. Better not to provoke. And he's not swayed by pleas or screams. She has the courage of her convictions. Go on and break, then. I'll finish anyway. I'll write longhand. I'll write on the back of my fucking hand if I have to. Because that's what I do. I go through the hole in the paper, and I fly like a big, dead bird all the way to Africa.
He starts to type again. A slow, ominous jungle drumbeat starts, steady and doom-laden, as the daylight starts to fade. His room is bathed in red light, the faint outline of a giant, hazy jungle sun on one side of the stage. Joining the drums comes the sound of bees. Scene 8, the same. Night. While Paul reads, Annie is pacing the room, as though she wants to hear, but she doesn't at the same time.
Let me go to her, I say. Rory pulled backward with furious strength, and Hezekiah moaned fearfully. No, boss. Don't make them bees crazy. Rory's dress shirt, now torn in a dozen pieces, began to come apart as Hezekiah tried to restrain him. Do you want to demonstrate your love by killing her, boss? Hezekiah hissed. Rory ceased to fight, and instead looked again on the dreadful sight.
The bees get louder and more numerous, as though we're approaching a massive hive.
Misery had been tied to a post in a clearing, her slender arms and legs brutally spread-eagled and bound by jungle vines to two thick wooden stakes. She wore not a stitch of clothing, yet Rory thought even the most prudish churchgoer could not have faulted her for indecency. Misery was far from naked. She was dressed in bees.
You have to stop, Paul.
The drums are pounding, and the bee noise is a horrible, thick, heaving drone.
Misery seemed almost to be wearing some strange nun's habit. Strange because it moved and undulated constantly across the swell of her breasts and hips. Now literally thousands of bees covered Misery in a thick, moving blanket.
Annie looks like she's going to die of anxiety. The bees and the drums.
Hezekiah whispered, as long as the drums beat, the bees will sleep, and she will live. But what if the drums stop? Rory asked, and just then, the drums did.
He puts down the pages. The sounds stop, and ordinary lighting returns.
How does she escape? She has to escape.
Maybe, maybe not.
I can't wait. Tell me the rest. Tell me how it ends.
I can't do that. You wouldn't respect me in the morning. You'll have to wait.
Well, I don't want to wait. Did Baron Heidsieck betray Misery? That's the one thing I really want to know. You're making me very angry. You know that, don't you?
You remember telling me what the little kid says to his mother? Mommy, you're mean. Isn't that what you're saying? Paul, you're mean.
Boy, gosh. If you make me much madder, I won't be responsible. I could make you tell.
If I give you what you want, you won't want it anymore.
You know what I think? I think you're never going to finish. I think you're willfully slowing down so you won't ever finish.
Annie, what do you want? I've written you a whole new chapter every single day.
Short chapters.
I can't go any faster.
Well, at least tell me if Hezekiah knows where Misery's father is. Tell me that.
You want me to write the book or fill in your questionnaire?
Don't you take that sarcastic tone to me. You tell me what happens.
If you cut anything else off me, I'll die. It won't be the shock of the amputation either. I'll die on purpose. I'm so sorry, Annie, but I've really got to put my foot down this time.
And obscene though it is, she laughs as well. They laugh and laugh. She suddenly hugs him in a grotesque display of affection.
Oh, Paul. I thought you were going to die after your operation. I did. You were barely breathing. I had to put the glucose strips back in your arms again and keep changing the bandages on your weepy stump. I'll never get a medal for what I've done, but Lord knows I deserve one.
You won't change my mind, you know.
Oh, and why would I ever try to change your mind about anything? A Mr. Smart guy like you who thinks for a living? All I ever did was pull you out of your wrecked car before you could freeze to death and splint your broken legs and give you your medicine and take care of you and talk you into writing the best book you ever wrote. If that's crazy, take me to the asylum.
You also cut off my fucking foot.
Don't you use that F word around me. I was raised better, even if you weren't. You're lucky I didn't cut off your man gland. I thought about it.
I know.
I want the end, and I want it now.
Very, very soon. Just a couple more chapters.
One more chapter.
All right. One more chapter. Tomorrow, you'll find out everything.
Oh, Paul. Poor darling. This is where you belong, you know? Yes, it is. Everyone else has forgotten about you. Oh, there was a few lines in the newspapers last year, tucked away where nobody reads things. And a silly young cop came around and asked me if I'd seen anything.
Someone came around?
Only right at the beginning. You were still unconscious. But what's happened since? Nothing. All your so-called friends seem to have forgotten about you.
No, they haven't.
Yes, they have, Paul. Just like everyone knew about Denver, but they've forgotten and don't bother anymore. People don't care, you see. They might say they do and kick up an almighty humbuggy fuss all the time, but pretty soon they forget.
Somebody is still looking for me.
Who, Paul? Not the police. They have more pressing things than a missing drunk driver. Not your fancy New York agent. I don't think she's paid for any special search parties. I haven't heard any helicopters combing the woods for you. She's got plenty of other writers. And there isn't anybody else, is there? You don't have any friends. You're like me.
I am nothing like you.
You're no good with other people.
Speak for yourself.
I'm speaking for both of us, Paul. I read the book jackets. 2 marriages and 2 failures. You tried to write that great novel so everyone would admire you, and you failed at that as well. Truth is, you've failed at just about everything, apart from misery. You've got your Dom Perignon for when you finish, like you always have. It costs $75 for 1 bottle, but Chucky Yoder at the liquor store said it's the best champagne in the world.
Well, old Chucky knows his champagne. There's something else I'd like if you've still got them.
What?
There were some cigarettes in my bag.
Now, you know those things are no good for you, Paul. They give you cancer.
Would you say cancer is something I have to worry about? We all know what happens when I type the N, don't we, Annie? Look, I just want 1 cigarette. For the end. What do you say, Annie? Be a sport?
All right. But before the champagne, I'm not drinking a $75 bottle of fizzy beer in a room with poison.
All right. Put it on the table tonight so I can smoke it on my own.
It's going to be a good end, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be hot stuff.
Annie smiles and walks out. Then, without any warning, she comes hurtling back towards him. She looks tortured, like 2 people fighting for possession of 1 person.
I love you, Paul. You know that, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
I love you. I don't feel real. I don't feel real. I don't feel real.
Blackout. Scene 9. The same. Morning. The lights come up on Paul's room, the hall, and the kitchen. Paul is smiling as Annie comes in.
You're not working.
That's right. I've stopped working. I'm not going to do any more. You know what I just typed, Annie?
All I know is you're not working, Mr. Man. And you promised me.
2 words.
The end? The end?
Hey, no peeking.
Oh, Paul! You get a whole row of gold stars! Oh, boy! Wait until you see this. I've not only got you champagne, I've got you caviar! A great big gooey pile of caviar! Wait here.
She runs out through the hall into the kitchen. As soon as she leaves the room, Paul puts the waste bin in the middle of the room. He starts screwing up the pages of the manuscript into balls and stuffing them in the waste bin. Meanwhile, Annie is preparing the caviar, taking it from the fridge and spooning it out to 2 pieces of bread. She is so excited she can't do it fast enough.
I don't even know if I like this stuff or not. You don't get anything for the money.
Paul grabs the matches from by his cigarette and lights one. His hands are shaking really badly as he tries to light the pile of papers. Meanwhile, Annie dips her finger in the caviar and tries some.
Oh, Paul. It's so rich it makes you want to throw up. I don't like it.
Paul finally has the waste bin burning. He waits until it's really ablaze. Then he wheels back to the bed and unbuckles the belt around his trousers.
Oh, Annie. Time for your story.
She gets the bottle of Dom Perignon from the fridge and fairly rips the wrapping off.
I'm coming. Hang on a minute.
Annie loads everything on the tray as Paul removes his belt and tucks it behind him in his wheelchair.
Annie, it's the best thing I've ever done. False modesty aside, I've got to say, this end's not good. It's much better than good. It's great. Too bad you'll never read it.
She enters his room and we go into stroboscope. Annie sees the book burning and for a moment she absolutely freezes, open-mouthed and stares, goes dead. She takes a step back like an animal afraid of fire. She drops the tray and the caviar and the champagne and she screams, a terrible, naked howl of betrayal.
No!
Little trick I learned from you.
You can't burn misery! You can't!
As she steps forward and drops to her knees to put it out, Paul rams his wheelchair forward and throws himself on top of her, whipping his belt around her neck. Annie struggles and kicks and struggles like the devil. He slams her to the ground and pulls the belt tight, jamming his knee in her back.
You cock-a-doodle brat!
He jerks the belt tighter. She tries to crawl away under the bed, but Paul crawls after her, strangling her, banging her head on the floor. She crawls a bit more, then falls, apparently dead, half under the bed. He punches her body and laughs madly. He finally stops, and his hand snakes across the bed, and he pulls another manuscript from under his pillow.
I beat you, you bitch. It was one of the notes I burnt. I beat you. You got burnt. This is my real book. This is my real book.
He slumps on the floor, lacking the strength to pull himself back up into his chair. He slowly gets his breath back.
This is my book. This is my book.
He doesn't see Annie rise slowly behind him, covered in blood. He still doesn't see her as she suddenly grabs him around the throat with her last breath and blackout. Scene 10. Applause breaks out. 28th Annual Romantic Fiction Awards. In darkness, we hear Paul's amplified voice and the sound of a schooner at sea. The scene begins as a tape, then cross-mixes to Paul reading aloud from his book.
Mr. Boss Rory, is she dead? Hezekiah inquired in a trembling voice, as Rory carried Misery's limp body onto the bunk in the captain's cabin. After all this, could God really be cruel enough to let Misery die? Once he would have denied such a possibility, but in the dark continent of Africa, he had discovered that there was not just one God, but many. And some were more than cruel. They were insane. If his Misery were truly dead, as he had come to fear, he intended to go up to the foredeck and throw himself over the rail. These wretched thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a harsh grasp from Hezekiah. "Mr. Boss Rory! Mr. Boss Rory! Look at her eyes! Look at her eyes!" Misery's eyes, that gorgeously delicate shade of cornflower blue, had fluttered open. For a moment, Rory saw only puzzlement in those eyes, and then recognition dawned in them. And then love, and he felt gladness roar through his soul.
The lights come up and we see Paul wearing a smart suit and looking very relaxed as he closes Misery's Return and waits for the applause to die down. Behind him is another giant cutout of a book, only this time it's Misery's Return, and the background shows the stone idol and the Burqa bee people in an African landscape. A banner across the book announces #1 bestseller. Paul holds his bronze rose.
Thank you. Not just for this award, but for everyone who sent cards and letters when I was in the hospital. I've got the doctor's hospital in Queens to thank for my new plastic foot, and I am not addicted to painkillers, as some newspapers have suggested recently. Well, not much anyway. After the sales of Misery's Return, I never need to write again, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure I will. But if I do, well, I've got a wonderful nonfiction idea.
Blackout. Curtain.